you stop to look at your mind, you begin to realize it's like having a whole committee in there, lots of different opinions, lots of different agendas. You see this especially when you're trying to get the mind to settle down. One part of the mind decides to focus on the breath, but it seems like there are other parts of the mind that want to go in other places, don't want to be bothered. So in the beginning, it's a question of learning how to strengthen the side of the mind that wants to stay. You can do this in lots of different ways. One is reminding yourself why you're here. Remind yourself of all the good things that can come through staying with the breath. You develop mindfulness, you develop concentration. The mind gets a sense of peace inside when the concentration gets strong. You develop alertness. You begin to see your own actions a lot more clearly. This is important. In fact, it's so important that the Buddha's last words were about heedfulness. Watch out, he said. When you practice, you have to be careful. You have to be heedful. You can't be complacent. This is because your actions are important. Think about it. The Buddha could have said a few last words about nirvana or emptiness. But instead he focused on heedfulness, the principle that your actions are important and you have to be careful about what you do because the actions can go in all sorts of different directions. They have results. And so as you meditate, you remind yourself of that fact, that what you're doing here is learning to be a lot more clear about what's going on in your mind. The more steadily you can stay with the breath, the more consistently, the more you see in terms of all the subtle politics going on in the mind. The part of the mind that wants to be heedful and the part of the mind that doesn't, or parts of the mind. It's like there are many different voices in there, not just two. So when you settle down to be with the breath, be prepared. There'll be lots of other voices pulling in different directions, and it's normal. Don't get discouraged. Try to strengthen the good voices by making the breath comfortable. So there's an immediately felt sense of ease, sense of well-being that comes just by sitting here breathing. Feels good to breathe in, feels good to breathe out. You don't have to force the breath, you don't have to hold it in, you don't have to count. Let the breath come in and out at whatever rhythm feels good for the body. If the rhythm keeps changing, fine, as long as it feels good. Be on top of each breath. Make sure that it feels right for the body, coming in and going out. And you find as you do this, you get more and more sensitive, so that you get more and more precise in doing this. The more precise and sensitive you are, the more absorbing the breath becomes, and the easier it is to stay here. So that this mindful, alert part of the mind, or the mindful, alert faction of the mind, gets stronger. Doesn't get kicked out so easily. Ordinarily, when greed, anger, and delusion take over the mind, they kick out the mindfulness and alertness. They don't want anybody around watching. It's like politicians when they're discussing a corrupt deal. They don't want journalists in there. They don't want anybody seeing what they're doing. You notice this when this part of the mind wants to do something unskillful, something it knows it shouldn't be doing. It'll try to kick out your alertness, kick out your mindfulness. Doesn't want to hear what they have to say. And that's how it can go ahead and do those things. But if mindfulness and alertness develop a strong hold here in the present moment, hanging on to the breath feels good, the breath is clear in different parts of the body. Wherever you can sense the breath, focus on that, and then let the different parts of the breathing sensations connect so it feels good. This gives mindfulness and alertness a really good, solid place to settle in. And then this way you can turn the fact that your mind is a committee to your advantage.